So it has been a while since I have done a face forward video, and I have the house to myself for like 30 minutes. So I figured I would hop on here right now and do a quick, I do think it's funny to say like, I'm going to hop on here when it's not live or anything like that, but regardless. I figured I would hop on here and do something that I've been meaning to do for a while, which is an AUTHORTUBE newbie tag, I think is what it's called. Whatever's the title of the video is what it is that I am doing. But I haven't done it, and I'll explain where I got the tag from and everything like that in a second. I haven't done it just because I think I've been a little hesitant because I don't really have, obviously, like a very clear plan for YouTube. I never really have for any of my social media things. Heck, I just got back on Instagram like 2 years ago. And I only did that because I thought it would help me with regards to putting my writing, my creative work out there more easily, which has been somewhat helpful, but not, I still don't have like a plan, you know? And YouTube has been kind of the same thing for me, to be honest. I have videos on here. If you're a subscriber, you've probably seen some of those. I think I've mentioned in previous videos, this is not my first attempt at YouTube. I did with my previous YouTube account, like back in 2015, 2016, I think. I think it was 2015. And that was okay. Like that was fine, but I didn't I don't know. I ended up deleting that channel and deleting those videos, and there was nothing wrong with them. It just wasn't the vibe I was going for at the time. And then a lot of life changes happened and it just wasn't what I was doing anymore. And then the last couple of years, I've had a lot of fun. Well, in fact, I know I've mentioned this before. My very first video on this channel, which I keep meaning to like go and like private or even delete because it's like, I don't need it anymore. But I had never posted videos on this YouTube channel until I was going to get a job I was applying for a job back in the spring of 2021, and it required a video as part of the interview, or as part of the application. And I did not know how else to get a video to them other than to put it on YouTube and send them a link, which is what I did. So that was my first video on this channel since on this new channel in general, but it was my first video since 2015 when I'd had my first YouTube channel. So anyway, I say all of that to say, I've over the last few years have made mostly some planner related videos, but then also I don't know if I can say mostly, but I've made a few planner related videos at the beginning. And then I've obviously, if you've been here recently, I've made a lot of planner videos recently. And then in between there, I made a lot of little videos, just like little mini life updates, I guess, about what I was doing and just nonsense, I guess. But now I feel like I'm at a point where I am more seriously pursuing a writing creative career. I guess I should say writing / creative career, just creative career in general, creative vocation, I guess. And I don't know how much I like YouTube. I like making videos. I like doing this. I would love to get better at it. I just don't know. It can be a little like energy zapping for me. So I don't know. That's why I'm just so like, they're kind of few and far between. I've made a lot more recently with regards to planner stuff, and that's been fun. But like I had tried to do, I think I've posted 1 or 2 like weekly plan with me's. They're just not my thing. Like at least not right now. I find them to be a little bit draining and not as fun for me creatively. Either the filming part or the actual like weekly planning part. So I don't know if I'm going to do those, like the plan with me type videos. I just don't know if that's my thing. But I've enjoyed other planning videos I've made. So anyway, I just don't really have a clear direction for what I'm doing here quite yet. And honestly, I feel like that's okay. Obviously, I also think there's something to be said for having a solid direction with what you want to do and a solid plan. But for me right now, especially the last few years, I've just been having so much fun reconnecting with my creative self, reconnecting with my creativity, not only my creative writing, that save a few years that I kind of struggled to do it, I've always kind of had as a part of me. but also just other aspects of my creativity, getting back into drawing and learning how to sketch and learning about painting and color theory and things like that, that I'd just not ever, I kind of abandoned when I was like 12, 13 years old, not for any reason other than that I just sort of stopped doing it. But I always loved it. And now getting back into it has been really fun. Filmmaking actually has always been something I've been really interested in as well, particularly screenwriting. And I wrote a screenplay when I was like 16, I think, 15 or 16. I might have been 14 when I wrote my first like goofy, I was probably 15. It was probably right in the middle. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Point is, I've always loved that kind of stuff too. And right now I'm just having a lot of fun getting back in touch with my creative self. And I think that's just, I don't know, maybe it's part of getting older. I just turned 37 recently, and I've genuinely enjoyed getting older. And I also think there's just something about getting older that people always say, you know, you start to care less of what other people think, and you kind of become more your true self, or who you were before you started caring what other people thought or whatever. And I've definitely found that to be true. And not that I still don't struggle with like people pleasing or caring what others think, but I have also noticed that it's gotten a lot better. And I also just think, I don't know, with the time that we're living in currently with the rise of AI, I'm very against AI being used by artists. By people who, I'm against AI art. We'll just say that. I'm against AI art, AI music, AI writing, all of that jazz. I can see some benefits of AI for some people, for some tool, certain things, but not for creative stuff. I'm very against it for that, for those purposes. And because of that, I feel like, and I don't know if I've ever shared this before, but I feel like I started, when I first, so I did my writing program. Maybe one day I'll do like a video about my whole like journey as a writer. But in fact, I know I will, because there are some things I want to talk about with regards to my journey as a writer. But just the quick rundown is, back in 2022, I did a year-long writing workshop program that really set me on the trajectory that I'm on now. So that was 22, 23. Early 23, while I was finishing up that writer's workshop, I also enrolled in Sarah Cannon's Publish and Thrive course, which was also very pivotal for me. And since then, I've also done her HB90 course and her Your Path Forward course, all of which were very helpful. And then on top of that, I haven't done it yet, but I think there's an artist on YouTube. Her name is Kelsey Rodriguez, I believe. And she has a creative entrepreneur like workbook / course thing that I'm currently looking into. She actually, as of this date today, April 16th, 2025 is the year. She actually has a deal going on to get like $30 off her course. So I might look into that. I have to talk with my husband first, see if that's okay. But I might do that too, because I've also, so that was, I did my writing stuff. I've been really trying to slowly pursue that writing career. And I've just intentionally been going slow. I'm also a wife and a mom. I'm a homemaker. I'm a homeschool mom. I'm involved in church. Over the last few years, I've had a couple part-time jobs too. So I'm just, I'm almost 40. And so, not that matters, but like, there's just a reality of like, I'm not a 20-year-old single person who can just give all of myself to my creative stuff all the time, even though I would love to. And so I've just been very well aware that my creative career is slow going, and that it is just that I'm also just having a lot of fun right now in the rediscovery of that, and in just kind of growing as a creative. And so on that note, I also, back in, I want to say it was late 2020. In fact, it was September of 2023 is when I discovered zines. And that was a whole, I kind of knew what zines were prior to that, but in learning about zines through a YouTuber named Braddy, I'll link her below. I want to say it's like Braddy X Bree or Braddy _ X Bree. I'll link it. I'm forgetting how she goes by Braddy Bree basically. But anyway, learning about, I don't even remember what I looked up on YouTube that led me to learning about zines and led me to her channel. But that was just so freeing for me to learn about that. And I ended up not only opening an Etsy shop and selling some of my own zines, but I also tabled at a local zine fest a couple hours away from me. and last year, and it was such a fun experience, and I'd love to do it again. And so I've just, all of that to say, I've just really been having a lot of fun growing creatively. And I say all of that to say, we're at 10 minutes in, and now I'm finally getting to my actual like AUTHORTUBE newbie tag. I have wanted to do this for a while. So the original person who did this AUTHORTUBE newbie tag or something, like I said, whatever the title is, is what it is. But it was author Jenna Streety, who wrote these questions, but I found them via another YouTuber named Cody the Writer. Author Jenna Streety is also on YouTube. I don't know how often she posts videos anymore, but that's who made the questions. I found it via Cody the Writer, who's on YouTube, who's a relatively newer author YouTuber from like, I think he started his channel 1 or 2 years ago, and I enjoy a lot of his videos. And he is who I found this through, and so I will link all of the things that I have mentioned down below if I remember. And so I didn't really prepare to answer these questions, and like I said, I've probably only got like another 10 minutes of being home alone, so I will go ahead and answer the questions. But I guess before I get into those, I guess I just want to say, for anybody who has subscribed to me for my planner content, or just my life, like random occasional, you know, talking head content, I don't really have a specific plan for this channel currently. Ideally, I would love to still make some planner content. I would also really love to eventually, I think I've mentioned this before, I really would love to narrate some of my own short stories on here. I just need to learn how to record voiceover. Anyway, so those are some things I would like to do in the future, but I don't really know. I don't really have a full-on plan. I do know like full-on vlogging probably isn't a big thing I'm going to do, at least not at home, mainly because my husband works at home. We also homeschool. My son has been on a couple of my videos in the past, like either in the background or like very briefly in 1 or 2. But I'm just kind of not into putting, you know, there's a couple pictures that I put of my son online and stuff, but I just try not to do that. And so I wouldn't want to do things like vlogging or anything like that around the house, since my family's always home too, and I'm not into the family vlogging thing. But also I know people can do things like that in a healthy way, but it's just not something that we want to do as a family. And then also, it's just it can be draining. Making videos is hard work. Anybody who says that like, oh, all those YouTubers are just, you know, they're just being lazy, playing around all day. Like, it's so much work. Like, and I've barely done anything. There's a reason I don't really edit. Like, and I think editing is fun. But, oh, that's another thing I started doing. I started doing freelance editing this last year, and that's been a blast. I love editing. Man, that really made me regret getting my degree in what I got it in. I wish I would have gotten my degree in English. Like, oh man, I love editing. It's so much fun. Anyway, all of that to say, that's where I'm at right now. So I don't fully know where my videos are going in the future. I just kind of have always made what I've made when I felt like making it, and that will probably be what I continue to do. But I just wanted to kind of give that quick little opening, I guess, 13-minute opening. So now I'm going to get into the actual AUTHORTUBE newbie tag questions. Here we go. Number 1 is, what is your book's pitch? And this is where I probably should have prepared a little bit better, but hey, I actually think I can bring it up on my computer right here. And this is me also real life, not editing, because I just don't edit. But let me see. I think it's right. Hold on. You know, I don't actually know if it's here. Anyway, I'll just kind of wing it. I'll just wing my pitch, because I don't fully remember what it is, but it's basically, so I'm currently writing a serial on Substack. I'm releasing it once a week on Substack. I haven't done it the last 6 weeks because it's been Lent and it's just been too much, and I didn't want the pressure of doing that. So I've been releasing 1 chapter a week, though. I think I've got about 26 chapters out, and I will be picking that back up at the beginning of May. I think May 1st is a Friday, and that's when I'm planning on my next, the next chapter starting up. It originally started out as the first episode, the first 5 chapters, each of my episodes is 5 chapters long. And so it originally started out where after the first episode, the first 5 chapters, or no, it was the first 10. It was the first 10 chapters. So the first 2 episodes. Then it was, you had to pay for it. And I did that for a while, and I actually just recently took that away, and I'm leaving it as free. I didn't want the barrier there, especially as a new author. I believe in authors and writers and creatives and everybody getting paid for their work. At the same time, though, I'm a new person, and like, I just felt like it was a lot to ask someone to pay me for not really knowing who I am. So I felt like it was better to just put it out there and have it there, and people could kind of slowly find me that way. But that's not my pitch. I'm getting off topic. What is my stories pitch, my serials pitch? Okay, I'm going to try to go off of memory. When small town waitress Bailey finds the mutilated bodies of her coworkers, she soon, I'm messing it up, guys. Anyway, it's about a small town waitress. That does not make it look very appealing. She's a small town waitress. She finds the mutilated bodies of her coworkers, and through that, there is obviously a media frenzy, and in the process of that, a wildlife documentary crew comes into town, and she ends up finding out that there is an entire world she never knew about, because they are not a typical wildlife documentary crew that films typical flora and fauna. They are looking for something else. So anyway, she ends up on quite the little adventure with them. So that's a very like off the top of my head pitch. It was not very good, but I've never been great at pitching something in a few words. So since I did not have it to read, that's my memory. So there you go. It is called Searching the Shadows, and you can currently read it on Substack, link below. All right, question number 2. If you were a book, how would you pitch yourself? Probably, so I enjoy the subgenre of weird fiction, speculative fiction overall, right? So fantasy, sci-fi, horror, particularly kind of leaning towards the horror and sci-fi and fantasy too, all of it, speculative fiction. But that subgenre of weird fiction, I really love. I've loved it since I was a kid. And I would say, while I don't necessarily know what my pitch is, I would say I am definitely the weird fiction subgenre. And I know that sounds cheesy to be like, oh, I'm such a weird girl. I'm so quirky. I get the whole, like, I get that that's kind of an awkward thing to say, or like just not, but it's true. Like, I just feel like my life and who I am is very much within the weird fiction genre. I'm not sure I have a pitch, but I'll give you my genre. I am weird fiction, the weird fiction subgenre, and I'm quite speculative. All right, number 3, what do you usually write? Like I just said, I do love speculative fiction, particularly of the spooky variety. I also do enjoy a good coming of age story. Well, I'll say this, coming of age / like slice of life. I do love those kinds of stories as well, but I also like them to have a little bit of weirdness to them. I like a little bit of something unsettling or uncanny or just something not quite normal. So those are usually, that's still, even if I go into other genres, that's usually how it will somehow end up. I have a hard time writing just typical, like, real life, modern, everything's normal. I have a couple ideas that are like that are more just like normal stories, but even within that, there's still some kind of fantastical. Well, they didn't start out that way, but over time they morphed into having something fantastical about them, just because that's just how I roll. Also, I keep looking at myself. I need to be looking there. I always do that when I make these videos. Number 4, what is something you will never write? I will never write spicy, open door, romance, sex scenes, things like that. I'm not against, I understand sometimes some stories require, like, you know, maybe something about characters getting together has something to do with something that will happen later. But I'm just very much like, I don't feel comfortable writing that. I don't feel comfortable reading that. So for me, I'm never going to write that. If I ever write stories and I have written stories where sex is implied, that's all it ever is it's just implied. I'm not going to go write a graphic or even semi-graphic, you know, detailed scene of that. It'll be implied. It'll be closed door. So I'll never write like that. And I also, being someone who does enjoy spooky fare, I don't mind graphic violence, and I don't mind, which isn't so funny, like the things like I don't like graphic like sex scenes, but I'm fine with like graphic violence. Anyway, however, having said that, I don't care for like extreme horror or there's like or like splatter punk, things like that. I'll never write things like that. So yeah, that's not really my thing either, but there you go. All right, number 5, what is your goal for starting an AuthorTube channel? Well, like I said, for the first 13 minutes of this video, I don't really know if this is full on AuthorTube yet. That'd be great if it becomes that. I just don't know if that's where I'm fully at. But I think something for me, I have a writing group that I've been a part of since I started my workshop 3 years ago now. And that's just been life-changing as well. So I think the idea of meeting and connecting with other writers is really appealing to me. Obviously there is a reality too of, you know, from just, you know, simply a business side of things. I always put business in quotes. From a business side of things, you know, it is a good way to find people who might be interested in reading your work as well. But mostly it's probably going to be other writers. BookTube is probably more where you're going to find people who want to read, whereas the AuthorTube is going to be more of fellow writers. But you know, but both things can happen. I also just think, I don't know, it's a fun, as far as social media goes, YouTube isn't, I don't know, YouTube doesn't seem as toxic maybe as some of the other ones. I'm sure it has its corners that are toxic, but I don't know, my experience with just the creative community online in general has been really, really, really positive. So yeah, I like it. I like it for that reason. So I think just to share my journey as an aspiring author, and then also to connect with other writers, it's fun. Number 6, what made you want to start writing? I've been writing since I was 7 years old. And as I just turned 37, so I've been writing now for 30 years. My very first story, I stapled like a book together. I stapled like paper together and made my own book and called it, I wrote my first serial actually, and it was called Dandruff the Dog. And it was about anthropomorphic animals and their little adventures. And, I've just always, I think I've always loved stories. I always, some of my earliest memories, were watching movies. They were watching Jaws, you know, and, you know, in my parents' first house in our living room, and I watched Jaws. I watched the Indiana Jones movies. I watched Star Wars. I watched, you know, Orca. I watched Beetlejuice and Gremlins and like all of those, you know, E.T., just that whole era. I was born in 88, so 1988, so as opposed to another 88. So anyway, yeah, I've just always loved stories, and I remember, and I always loved books, and I remember first learning, I don't remember the exact moment, but I do remember being like 7 years old and kind of having that realization, like I can write my own stories, you know, and I don't remember what it was that like really sparked that specifically. I think it just, I don't know, I've just always written. And when I was in elementary school, I went to a school that participated in what was called a Young Authors program. And so we all would write a story every year. I won 2 of those. One of them, I even got to go to like a state thing and get a ribbon. You know, I've just always written. I've always gone in that direction. And, you know, yeah. And then my 20s were a little bit more up and down with regards to my seriousness about writing, but it's always been something that's been a part of me, and in different iterations. And yeah, a few years ago, it was actually my husband who really I really wanted to get back into writing. And it was my husband who actually found the writing workshop for me and said, hey, I think you should check this out. And it was just, you know, I remember getting ready for the open house for that program on Zoom, and I was crying before, and my husband's like, what's wrong? I was like, I just know I'm going to want to do this, and I'm scared. And he's like, it's just an open house. Like, you're just getting information. And I'm like, I know, but I'm going to apply afterwards. I just know it. And so my husband has been really supportive. I've been very blessed to have a lot of supportive people in my life with regards to my writing and creativity. Anyway, that was a really long answer, but that's how I started writing. So all right, number 7, what is your publishing path? Self-published, traditional published, hybrid, haven't decided yet, or you're just writing for fun? Back in the day, my mind, it was always set on traditional publishing because that's really all there was. Indie publishing wasn't really a thing, or at the very least, it wasn't very well received. That obviously has changed in the last, decade and a half. So then in the last few years, when I started getting back into publishing or getting back into writing, I was very adamant that I would do indie publishing only. However, now I'm a bit more, as a few years have gone by, I'm a bit more open and actually attracted to the idea of kind of a hybrid, a mix of traditional and indie publishing. And I am also just writing to have fun. I'm having the most fun I've ever had as a writer. This last year especially, but the last few years in general have been just really fun for me. Question number 8, what content do you bring to the AuthorTube table? I don't know yet. I don't know yet. I guess the only thing I can think of that maybe might make me stand out a little bit, and not really even, is like I am a mom and a homemaker and a homeschool mom, but there are other mom writers on YouTube, so that doesn't make me any different. I am an Orthodox Christian, but I don't write explicitly Christian fiction, and I don't really, I guess maybe being a Christian who writes spooky stuff. I don't know. I don't really have a shtick by any means. And I'm not really sure what I bring that's different. But I hope to discover that as we go. Like I said, a lot of this is just me having fun right now and reconnecting with my own creativity and meeting other creatives. And so yeah, I don't really know if I have a specific thing yet that I feel like I can pinpoint that what I bring, but I hope you have fun while you're here. Number 9, what is your biggest writing struggle? Routine and consistency. I have pretty severe ADHD. I need structure, but I also naturally rebel against it. And so just having that consistent routine of writing, and I've heard a lot of things that consistency just isn't really realistic for people with ADHD, that it's better to have not a consistent routine, but just a routine that's easy for you to jump back into. Regardless of, I'm just trying to right now figure out what is the best way for me to set up my days, especially also being a homemaker and homeschool mom and, wanting to kind of just balance all of that and not really even balance all of that, but just have it all blend together. Because I'm not so much a believer in balance as I am in the blending of things. And so the blending of those different life areas. So yeah, having that consistent structure routine that also has that element of flexibility and freedom built into it as well. So I would say that's my biggest struggle. Question number 10, what is your best writing skill? I used to think I used to think that dialogue was actually my worst, but I actually think now, I think writing dialogue is actually where I do really well at personally. I think my husband and son might be home. I think writing dialogue is where my strengths lie. Personally, I actually think I struggle a lot with description, but what's that? The next one is choose between question 11 and 12. So I'll choose question 12 if you are new. The other one is if you're already on AuthorTube. So question number 12, if you are new to AuthorTube, what is your biggest AuthorTube question? I guess I would ask if you've been on AuthorTube for a while, how do you I guess I would actually revert back to the earlier question that I didn't really know how to answer. What content do you bring to the AuthorTube table? How do you determine that? I think something that sometimes overwhelms me a little bit is that I do feel like right now with social media, there is such an oversaturation in every area, right? Like in every niche and there's some kind of oversaturation within that niche even. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what it kind of feels like. And so sometimes, even answering that question is kind of hard for me. Like, I just feel like I sound like every other person who wants to be on YouTube, or who wants to write, or who wants to, you know, be a creative online. And it's just like, but you also don't want to make something up, right? Like, you don't want to just create your own, you don't want to be fake. You don't want to make a shtick just for making a shtick's sake, right? So like, what is my, you know, how do you be yourself while also setting yourself apart, when so many of us creatives are so similar, and most of us all have similar, you know, life situations? Or I guess that's not true. You can't say that we all have similar life situations, but you know what I mean? Like, like for me, like, there's already so many mom writers on YouTube, right? Like, you know, so I don't really, you know, I don't know. It's like, how do you find that balance? And then I guess the secondary question would be, how do you go about finding, when you do connect with other YouTuber, other AuthorTube writers, how do you go about things like collaboration, or critique partners, things like that? How do you go about that with people that you don't really know in person? And that's not to say you can't build strong friendships online. I have before with my current writing group. But we all also first met in person. So how do you go about that with people that you don't know in person? So I guess those would be my two questions, I guess. How do you be authentic and still set yourself apart? And then also, how do you navigate those author connections on AuthorTube? All right, question number 13. Are you looking for any new channels to follow, betas, CPs, critique partners, or other types of writer buddies? If so, tell us who you're looking for and connect with them in the comments. Kind of just acknowledge that I'm pretty open to, of course, for me, I think other writers of horror and speculative fiction, but particularly like horror / weird fiction subgenre, I would love to meet. I've met a lot of those people on Instagram, actually. And so I would love to meet more here on YouTube. I've found a couple horror spooky writers on YouTube as well, and I would love to connect with more. Yeah, I think that's great. So I would definitely say that that's something that I'm interested in, as well as maybe even other, like moms who are horror writers or spooky writers. I think for me, I love that juxtaposition of like being a housewife, and like particularly for me, like I'm a Christian housewife who also writes horror. So I kind of like and I don't write like Christian horror. So I like not to say that there's never elements, of course, because I always think the writer puts a little bit of themselves in their writing, whether, you know, they can't even help it really, but that's not my intention. And I don't write explicitly Christian fiction. So I think having that element too, I kind of like being that dichotomy. And so, it'd be fun to meet other women writers or other Christian writers who don't write explicitly Christian fiction, or who don't write, you know, a lot of women writers write romance. And so it'd be fun to meet other women writers who don't write, you know, who write a similar genre to me. That would be fun as well. Okay, last question, number 14. What are you most excited for during this new fresh start on AuthorTube? Well, like I have already said, I don't officially know if this will be a full-on AuthorTube channel, but I think I'm most excited, honestly, to add something like this to my creative endeavors currently. Like I've said, I've been having so much fun reconnecting with my creativity these last couple of years. And I think the excitement for me about being on here is the potential to get to share this part of myself a little bit more, in a little bit more detail. Feel like maybe I've always struggled with feeling misunderstood. And the internet's probably not where you should go to feel understood, but there is a part of me that's like, man, I feel like, I don't know. Again, my experience with the creative community online has been nothing but positive from day one. And that's been my experience. I know it's not been everybody's experience, and I know not experiment. And I know I'm still very like small, very, very small online, but it is still, my experience has just been great. And so I think there's a part of me that alone has made the idea of sharing my work, putting myself out here like this, has made it so much more appealing. And so I think for me, I'm just excited I'm really excited to just be in this phase of life where I'm like seriously pursuing the thing that I've wanted to do for 30 years. And you know, it's easy to look back and be like, man, I wish I would have started this when I was 20. And, you know, but it's like, I didn't, and that's okay. And I'm here now, and I'm having a lot of fun, and whatever will be, right? So, yeah, I'm just having a lot of fun with it. And I'm just excited for the fun to come, no matter what direction it may take. So, so we'll see. So if you've made it this far, hey, I made it 30 minutes, which means my husband and son should be back pretty soon. So, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I do apologize for not having a clear direction for you on whether or not this is a kind of channel you might want to subscribe to. But if you're still here and if you do subscribe, or if you just enjoyed it, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a blessed day. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Again, I said that a second time. There you go. Bye.